So how can we maximize our flow of value? Well, one way that I'm going to cover today is that we can do something that I like to call MBI Tetris. Hi, I'm Joshua Barnes, and I am the founder of Process Mentors, and I would like to welcome you all to All Things Discipline Agile. So this is part of a 12 episode series that I've been doing that brings in a lot of the best parts, or in my opinion, the best parts of the Discipline Agile approach to value stream management. And today we're going to cover value planning, MBI Tetris. Next week, I'm going to cover an additional technique for value flow planning that's going to focus on features and story level. So let's take a look at what value flow planning is. So from a DA perspective, the event is intended to accomplish things like getting clarity on the sequence of the work that we're going to be doing. Making adjustments as necessary. So looking at things like accumulated impact, looking at dependencies that we're having to accommodate because we can't eliminate, or possibly we can eliminate with some of the options we have. So adjusting things from a right or left perspective on the timeline. Identifying dependencies. What are they? What options do we have to bring them from outside of a team to inside of a team? How do we look at identifying improvements? And finally, creating visibility. So the value flow planning part of the VSC course centers a lot around identifying and then managing dependencies. Again, from a DA perspective, we're always trying to eliminate dependencies and only accommodate them when we have to. And the course centers around a comprehensive scenario that is a teams of teams approach. So we have multiple teams that are working together to get a number of MBIs completed. And so it's quite valuable in the approach, but what I want to do is I want to take a look at almost what might be considered look ahead value flow planning, or just value flow planning from a different perspective. How can we plan for maximizing or potentially maximizing our value delivery? So last week, one of the things that I took a look at was the idealized value stream. And so our value stream always starts with our customers in mind and ends with delivery of value to the customer. So we've got our business side. This is where ideas that come from our customers, needs that have been identified from our stakeholders, flow through portfolio management, how we make investment decisions that are aligning with our strategic objectives and the initiatives that those have been decomposed into. And then we identify the minimum business increments, the MBIs or the MVPs. And we'll have a rather large business backlog, potentially depending on the size of the value stream or the product line that we're working with. And then we have our product management, which is the discovery workflow. And it's here that the top ordered items in that business backlog have an additional investment made in them. Additional discussion, we're going to actually capture the context of the MBIs, and that's when we're ready for implementation. They're put into the intake queue, which is the intersection between discovery and delivery. And I used an example of a complicated MBI, one that had a fair amount of work, the value-adding activities across the operational development and supporting value streams. And that work needed to be done in parallel to be able to get to the point where it was completed, we can release that value to the customer. But how do we determine what to pull out of the intake queue and into our intake backlog? What type of planning or look ahead planning do we need to do to be able to make sure that we're maximizing this effort? So the MBIs and MVPs that are coming through the discovery side and meet the definition of ready are considered ready for implementation. And then the intake queue is used as this bridge between the discovery and implementation, or when we're getting ready for value delivery. So if we look at this and I think about when we're going to pull the work, well, one of the things that is critical is that we're making sure that the people that are going to be doing the value adding to activities have the capacity. And it's across the span of time that we expect that MBI require their capacity in those points in time where we would need one team or one value stream versus another contributing to it. And how do we plan for this? And this is what I call MBI Tetris. So hopefully some of you out there will have played Tetris, the classic game where we've got these geometric shapes that, drop from the top, and we can move them laterally, and we can, move them around, we can rotate them to be able to fit as many as we can together. And when you've got 4 of them that build a solid, approach at the bottom, right, you get kind of credit for that, you keep building upon it. And it's that mindset that I'm using for this MBI Tetris and how we can do this type of planning. So let's take a look at what the setup of this would be. So again, we've got our intake queue, and I'm going to take a look at the example that I've used in some of the previous episodes where I've got 5 products and the teams that are supporting the enhancements within those products. And if we do value flow planning, or we're doing some look ahead value flow planning, how can we take what's in the intake queue, and again, from a Tetris perspective, fit them all together to be able to potentially maximize the amount of value that we can flow through this? So now, one thing I do want to say is to simplify the graphics and not make it where they're teeny tiny and it would be really hard for any of you watching this to see, I am going to just demonstrate using the development value stream. In practice, and when I do this with organizations, what we do is we use either a big giant whiteboard, or these days we use a virtual canvas, right? So I like to do this using Miro, where we have a lot more room and we can zoom in, move around, a lot easier than I can do in a PowerPoint presentation. So all right, let's go ahead and plan the flow of value using this MBI Tetris approach. So I'm going to look to the intake queue, and I'm going to take a look at the MBIs. And within those, we've captured the feature level requirements that are the enhancements we're looking to do. We have at least a good understanding of what teams would potentially be doing this work, right? We've done enough understanding of that to meet our definition of ready to take a look at an MBI and start putting it on our planning board, right? So this is an example of an MBI that has enhancements across these 5 products. And we've got a sequencing of the work that's going to be done. So the direct-to-consumer sales portal team, they've got 3 features, and we've got the additional single features from these other products. So this looks like it'd be a pretty good fit. And we have, now one thing I'll get into in the value creation structure options that we have, that's going to be a episode that I'll be doing a couple of weeks from now. One of the things that is very unique about this approach, the Discipline Agile Value Stream Management approach, is that when the teams are contributing to activities that are adding value for an MBI, they're not on the MBI. This isn't a virtual construct that when you're on it, it gets launched, and you're on it from the time it starts to the time it ends. What we need to look at is we need to look at when this work needs to get done. Are there any dependencies? Is there any sequencing? And we can have teams that don't start all on the same point in time on day 1, so January 1st or maybe January 2nd, where the direct-to-consumer sales portal team and the product fulfillment and ultra-premium teams, ultra-premium innovations teams start. What we can do with this approach is we can look at another MBI, right? So here's one that we've got, and we've got awareness of it, that there's a fair amount of work in our fulfillment system and a little bit of work in our ultra premium innovations team, right? So this can fit in. Those 2 teams can do the work of MBI a 1.1 that I've got here. And once they get their part done, they can move on to doing more. So again, from a Tetris perspective, we can fill this in. Another MBI that has a fair amount of work for a single team, the inventory management system team, that they're doing on their own, could fit in very nicely here. Another MBI that has our direct-to-consumer sales team and our marketing platform team. So we're looking at this, and again, this is MBI Tetris, and so and again, it's MBIs, MVPs, but we also, when we're doing this type of planning, can take a look at how we fill in around these big rocks, which are the big MBIs, and the smaller rocks, the smaller MBIs, right? The Stephen Covey reference where we've got big rocks and little rocks and sand, and we're filling in all of the space. So we've got stories, we have work that the innovations team can do that's not part of an MBI. It goes through the intake management process, but we're fitting it in here because there is a span of time where they can do some work that the product owner for that product and through the product ownership group feels is very valuable to do. And we can do the same thing up here with the marketing platform. This could have been a smaller MBI that this team could have fit in here, series of stories like this. And again, it's coming through the intake process, but it's not tied to an MBI. It's not a new feature, new capability. It's a lot of small enhancements right at the story level that we're having the work done on. So this is an example of a quarterly planning approach. And we can keep going. We can see that, okay, we're getting towards the end of March. We're going to do some look ahead value flow planning again. These things, again, we're going to see some shifting as these MBIs, these scopes of work are being done. And we look now to the next large MBI. And this one is pretty big. And it was ordered at the top, but the amount of capacity needed of the teams to do this wasn't there. And again, we would be looking beyond just the development value stream. We're also looking at the supporting as well as definitely the operational value stream for each one of these MBIs if there's that quantity of work that needs to be done as well. And again, we're going to take a look at what are the next MBI that we have that we can fit in around this space. So going beyond something that we see again in the course where we've got a visual control, we've got a dependency board where we have a number of MBIs and features and even some stories, and we've used the virtual string and the canvas that we use in the course to kind of show dependencies and what options we have. This is another way we can plan the flow of value. We can see what teams are available, how much of their capacity is going to be needed, what's the moment in time that they would need to start doing that work. Again, if we've got things from a precedence or a priority perspective. And so that's the thing I wanted to introduce today, my MBI Tetris as it was. So is the capacity of all the people that are needed available, and how do we best utilize that capacity, right? What options do we have from a planning perspective? What is the precedence, the sequencing, the dependencies? Again, what options do we have there? How do we fit the geometric shapes, right? Our MVIs and our MVPs, as well as other types of work, again, stories, paying down technical debt, also within that time period. And we do this to be able to maximize the potential flow of value. So, yeah, that is my take on MBI Tetris. I want to see if we've got any questions out there. And yes, Claudia, great to see you. And yes, this is a real game of Tetris that we have, a way to also visualize from a planning perspective these larger as well as smaller quantities of work that we're going to be taking on in the next planning period. Again, from a quarter perspective or whatever that planning horizon is going to potentially look like and make the most sense. I don't see any other questions coming up. So I'll say, for those of you that are watching this live, if you have any others, please do put them in LinkedIn in the comments. I will endeavor to post on these. I will be publishing the next weekly newsletter on LinkedIn. The next article that I'll do is going to be centered on this, like I've been doing with the other All Things Discipline Agile episodes that I've been doing. So hopefully this piques your interest a little bit. Maybe you go back and think about when you've played Tetris and how this analogy might be able to help solve some of the challenges in how you can flow the value through your value stream more and more efficiently. Oh, sorry, we have another question from Claudia. Who should attend these planning events? Claudia, excellent question. So when we're looking at that bridge between discovery and implementation, we're looking at the people that would be doing the work. So we would want our representation of our team members. So our product owner, our architecture owner, if we have a chief product owner, we want, if we've got people that are going to be participating in a supporting value stream perspective, the people or the teams that might be doing a marketing campaign from an operational value stream perspective, we'd want them to participate. as well as some of the roles that we see on the discovery side, right? The business side. We'd want our product managers, potentially our business architects and technical architects. So this is still more of sort of what we'd call a big room planning to see what we can fit in together. And again, this gives us an opportunity, like we do in the value flow planning that we teach in the VSC course, to see if maybe we can identify a way that we can split an MBI into two or more, because we've now identified a way or an opportunity to deliver something even smaller that would be of value, that again, we can get through our 3 value streams and into the hands of our customers, get feedback, get all of the things that we're looking for. Excellent question. How the priority is set between different teams, who has the highest priority? So I'll try and I'll give a little insight into that. But what I also want to say is that is going to be a topic of another session. The ordering, and I'm intentionally using the word ordering versus prioritization of what we see both in the intake queue and then where the intake queue comes from, our business backlog. We want to be able to look at the outcomes that we're desiring, right? So we have objectives, we have things that we're wanting, we have an increase in sales, right? Or increase in revenue. It might be a new revenue stream. It might be me keeping up with competition. It might be cost avoidance. It might be how we're lowering the acquisition cost of our customers. All those potential things and how we would measure them. What I want to do is I want to invite Steve Tendon, who's the creator of TameFlow. He and I have talked about his full kiting approach to that queue space, that business backlog space, and how we look at prioritization, which is a huge contributor to the priority in that space, which gives us the opportunity then to take a look at what we would be doing next. So that's a whole nother episode that I'll cover. But yeah, excellent question. Another one from Steve. Steve, good to see you. Can the MBI be considered similar to a release train product increment with slightly different roles engaged? So the MBI is sort of, and I say that pretty loosely, because with an MBI, it should be considered that next, like almost like a project. It's a discrete quantity of work that we are doing. The difference between a release train and what the teams on a release train trying to get that next program increment out is the people, the teams, whether we're in the development value stream or potentially the other 2 value streams, they don't stick with the MBI all the way through if their contribution, their value adding activities are done. And I'm gonna go back for just a second here and let me pull up this graphic here, and let me get the let's get this off for a second so I got it all. So what I want to be able to show, Steve, is that the Agile release train and the concept of having people on a virtual construct like that, once it's launched, they're on it, and they are organizing around getting that work done. And that quantity of work, although we can release on demand, we can release whenever it would make sense. Most of the time, I think it's going to be in practice. We're going to have that next increment, and it's going to take that time span, say 10 weeks. Here, the people that are doing the value-adding activities can start doing that work when they're available, and if there isn't a dependency. So I'm gonna use my mouse for a second, and where I've got all the stories that I brought on here. If there was a dependency of this feature, the first one up here in green for our Catalyst marketing platform, if this needed to be all over here to the left, right, all the way up in January, because if we don't have that feature, there's a dependency or precedence on something else that one of the other teams is doing, or maybe we've got, again, in the example up above, we've got 3 features. That would change potentially how we would sequence these MBIs. Right, so we're looking at the capacity of the teams, the people doing the work, and when we can fit all these things together. Let's see. So Steve, hopefully that answered your question. If not, please keep the discussion going in the chat, and over the next day or so, I'll try and provide maybe a few other examples or context if that didn't. And it doesn't look like there are any others. So I'll say thank you to everybody that attended live today. Again, think about this. Any questions, any counterpoints, please put them in. I'd love to hear them. And anybody that's watching this on replay, absolutely the same offer. So I'll hopefully see you all next week where I'll cover another type of value flow planning, but this is where we're getting into an MBI across features and potentially down to the story level. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.